Let's start by setting the contract clearly. This is not an argument. This is not persuasion. This is not an attempt to tell you what you should believe about retirement systems, employers, or policy. We are walking through trade-offs. Not emotionally, not ideologically, structurally. Because the goal here isn't agreement. The goal is understanding. A 401k is not an abstract concept. It is not a theory. It is not a spreadsheet exercise that lives in isolation. For most people, it is the single largest financial mechanism shaping their future standard of living after their working years end. It determines how much flexibility you will have later, how much stress you will carry, how dependent you may be on continued work, and how exposed you are to risk when time is no longer on your side. Despite that, most conversations about the 401k are chaotic. They usually fall into one of two extremes. On one side, it's presented as an obvious win. On the other, it's described as fundamentally broken. Both sides tend to speak confidently. Neither side tends to slow down. Neither side tends to do the math. And almost neither side explains conditions. So today, we're doing something different. We are not debating ideology. We are not defending institutions. We are not attacking systems. We are breaking the 401k down into what it does well, where it underperforms, the conditions where it works best, and the conditions where it quietly works against you. And we're doing it with math, not opinions. Because math has a useful quality. It doesn't care how confident you sound. There is a reason the pros, cons, and let's do the math structure keeps people watching. When someone hears pros and cons, something important happens cognitively. Their guard drops. Pros and cons signals balance. It signals fairness. It signals that the conclusion hasn't already been decided. The listener doesn't feel pushed. They feel informed. Then comes the second phrase. Let's do the math. That phrase signals something else entirely. It signals resolution. Numbers imply that this discussion will eventually land somewhere concrete. The math may not provide certainty, but it will narrow the range of reasonable conclusions. Until the math is done, the question remains open. Which side wins? Do the benefits outweigh the costs? Do the trade-offs make sense? The brain dislikes unfinished loops. So people stay. Not because they're being persuaded, but because they're waiting for closure. The 401k is especially effective in this format for one reason: relevance. Most people already have one. Most people already contribute to one. Most people already hope it works. At the same time, most people do not fully understand how it behaves over long periods. Taxes feel abstract. Fees feel small. Limits feel distant. Withdrawals feel like a future problem. For Gen X in particular, this creates tension. They are far enough into their careers to know markets fluctuate. They are close enough to retirement for mistakes to feel expensive. They have enough experience to distrust simple narratives. This makes them ideal for a discussion that prioritizes structure over slogans. Let's begin with what a 401k actually does well. Because it does several things very well, and pretending otherwise makes the rest of the analysis meaningless. The first advantage is tax deferral. In a traditional 401k, money goes in before income taxes are applied. That means more capital is invested up front. Over time, this matters. Compounding is not linear. It is exponential. A larger starting base compounds more aggressively than a smaller one. When taxes are deferred, more dollars stay invested for longer. In addition, gains inside the account are not taxed annually. There is no capital gains tax drag. There is no dividend tax drag. There is no yearly erosion from taxation. This alone makes tax-advantaged accounts powerful over long horizons. The second major advantage is the employer match. If your employer matches part of your contribution, that is an immediate, risk-free return. There is no market exposure required. There is no performance dependency. There is no alternative investment that reliably offers a return of that magnitude with zero risk. If you contribute money and your employer adds money on top of it, your effective return begins above zero before the market does anything at all. Mathematically, ignoring the match makes little sense. The third advantage is automation. Money is removed from your paycheck before you ever see it. This bypasses willpower, which is one of the least reliable tools in personal finance. Most people do not fail to save because they lack information. They fail because friction, temptation, and inconsistency erode good intentions. Automation solves that problem quietly and consistently. This behavioral advantage alone explains why many people retire with meaningful savings at all. Now we move to the other side. Not flaws. Trade-offs. These are not reasons to abandon a 401k. They are reasons to understand its limits. The first trade-off is fees. Fees are dangerous because they are subtle. A 1% annual fee sounds small. It feels negligible. It rarely triggers concern. But over decades, that fee compounds against you. Two portfolios can earn the same gross return and produce dramatically different outcomes solely because of fees. The difference is not 1% once. It is 1% every year. Over 30 or 40 years, that gap can quietly absorb a substantial portion of your potential wealth. No market crash is required. No bad decision is visible. The loss happens invisibly. The second trade-off is contribution limits. Early in a career, limits rarely matter. Income is lower, and saving capacity is constrained anyway. Later in life, the situation reverses. Income is often higher. Urgency increases, and the desire to accelerate savings grows. At that point, the contribution cap becomes binding. You may have the ability to save more. You may have the motivation to save more. But the structure limits how fast capital can be added. This matters most for late starters and those with uneven career trajectories. The third trade-off is required withdrawals. Eventually, the government requires distributions from traditional 401k accounts. Whether you need the money or not, whether it is tax efficient or not. This introduces future tax planning risk. Deferring taxes is not the same as eliminating them. At this point, something important happens. Once both sides are visible, the conversation changes. The question is no longer whether the 401k is good or bad. That question is too crude to be useful. The real question becomes, under what conditions does it work well, and under what conditions does it underperform? This is where math replaces ideology. A 401k works best under a specific set of conditions. First, there is a meaningful employer match. Free money dramatically improves outcomes. Ignoring it weakens the entire structure. Second, fees are low. Low-cost investment options preserve compounding. Over long horizons, this factor alone can outweigh many others. Third, contributions are consistent. The system rewards duration, not timing. Staying invested matters more than trying to optimize entries. Fourth, the time horizon is long. The longer money remains invested, the more powerful tax deferral becomes. Under these conditions, the 401k is extremely effective. The structure amplifies good behavior. The math works in your favor. The same tool performs poorly when conditions change. High fees quietly erode growth. Limited investment choices restrict diversification. No employer match removes the immediate advantage. Late starts collide with contribution caps. Liquidity needs before retirement age create friction. None of these mean failure. They mean the tool is being asked to solve a problem it wasn't designed to solve. This brings us to the decision rule, not advice, a framework. If you have access to a strong employer match and low-cost investment options, prioritizing the 401k makes mathematical sense. If fees are high and the match is weak or non-existent, limiting exposure and diversifying your strategy may improve outcomes. This is not about rejecting the 401k. It is about sequencing. Capture free money first. Preserve compounding second. Add flexibility where needed. Notice what didn't happen in this discussion. There was no fear, no urgency, no moral framing. You weren't told you were doing it wrong. You weren't told the system was collapsing. You weren't pushed toward a product. Instead, you were given structure. And structure respects intelligence. It allows people to locate themselves in the analysis without being judged. That is why this format retains attention. And that is why it builds trust. Most financial stress does not come from bad decisions. It comes from unclear trade-offs. When trade-offs are hidden, anxiety fills the gap. When trade-offs are visible, decisions become manageable. That is the purpose of this breakdown. Not certainty, clarity, pros, cons, then the math. No noise, no extremes, just understanding.